Mom, you're embarrassing us. You need to move out. 30 days. My son Daniel stood in the kitchen of what he thought was his house. Arms crossed, expression firm, final. His wife Jessica nodded behind him. It's time, Helen. You can't live with us forever. We need our space, our privacy, our life. I looked at them. At my son, the boy I'd raised alone from the time he was 6 months old. The man I'd worked 3 jobs to put through college. The person I'd sacrificed everything for. And at Jessica, the woman he'd married 3 years ago. The woman who'd been polite at first, but had grown increasingly cold, increasingly hostile, increasingly determined to get me out of her house. 30 days? I repeated quietly. Yes, Daniel said. We'll help you find a place. Something small. A studio apartment, maybe. Something you can afford on your warehouse salary. We are not being cruel, Mom. We're being realistic. You need to start thinking about your future. About independence. Independence. From the son I'd made independent. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jessica's parents are coming for Thanksgiving, he continued. And honestly, it's awkward having you here. They don't understand why a grown woman lives with her son. It reflects badly on us, on me. I see. I was an embarrassment, a burden, a problem to be solved. I understand, I said quietly. Daniel's shoulders relaxed. He'd expected a fight, expected tears, expected me to beg or argue or plead. When I didn't, he seemed almost disappointed, like he'd prepared a speech and wouldn't get to use it. You're not mad? Jessica asked suspiciously. Would it matter if I was? Well, no, but still, I expected more resistance. I'm 62 years old, Jessica. I've learned when to fight and when to accept reality. If you want me gone, I'll go. Daniel looked relieved. Guilty, but relieved. Thanks for understanding, Mom. Really, this is better for everyone, you'll see. Independence will be good for you. If you enjoyed this opening, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. It helps others find these stories. They left the kitchen, went upstairs to their bedroom, left me standing alone in what they thought was their house. I waited until I heard their door close. Then I went to my room, the small guest bedroom at the end of the hall, the room I'd been living in for 5 years. In my own house, I opened my closet, moved aside the clothes, reached behind them to the safe I'd installed years ago, entered the code, 6 digits, Daniel's birthday backwards. A little joke to myself. Inside were documents, papers Daniel had never seen, never knew existed, never asked about because he'd never been curious about his mother's life beyond what directly affected him. I pulled out a folder. Thick, full, legal documents, property deeds, corporate paperwork, partnership agreements, all dated, all notarized, all legally binding, and I sat on my bed and made a decision. For 5 years, I'd let Daniel believe a lie, let him think he was self-made, independent, successful on his own merit. I'd hidden the truth because I thought it would be good for him, build character, teach him the value of hard work. But instead, it had taught him to be ashamed of his mother, to see me as less than, to let his wife treat me like a burden, to evict me from my own property like I was a tenant behind on rent. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their choices, even when that someone is your son, especially when that someone is your son. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my room and thought about how I'd gotten here, how the boy I'd loved more than my own life had become a man who was embarrassed by my existence. Let me tell you my story. The real one, not the one Daniel thought he knew. My name is Helen Morrison. I'm 62 years old, a widow, a mother, and the founder and CEO of Morrison Logistics, a warehousing and distribution company worth $72 million. But my son, Daniel, He thought I was just a warehouse worker, a simple employee, someone who clocked in and clocked out and barely made ends meet, and I'd let him think that, for reasons I was now questioning. I grew up poor, really poor, rural Pennsylvania. My father was a coal miner, my mother cleaned houses. We had enough to eat, but not much else. I wore hand-me-downs from church donations, worked from the time I was 12, knew early that if I wanted a better life, I'd have to build it myself. I got pregnant at 21. The father of a boy I'd dated for 6 months disappeared the moment I told him. Moved to another state, changed his number, wanted nothing to do with me or the baby. So I had Daniel alone, gave birth alone, raised him alone. No family support, no father, just me and my baby boy against the world. I worked 3 jobs, waitress during the day, gas station attendant evenings, cleaning offices at night. Daniel stayed with a neighbor who watched kids for cheap. I saw him maybe 2 hours a day, slept 4 hours a night, lived on coffee and determination. But I saved money, every penny I could, kept it in a coffee can under my bed because I didn't trust banks. Had a goal, a dream, a plan. When Daniel was 6 years old, I had saved $20,000. $20,000 earned $1 at a time over 6 years of brutal work. And I took that money and did something crazy, something risky, something everyone told me was stupid. I bought a failing warehouse, small operation, 5,000 square feet, in a bad part of town. The owner was retiring, had no family to leave it to, wanted $10,000 just to be rid of it. Came with a forklift and some pallet racks. That's it. Everyone said I was insane. Helen, you don't know anything about warehousing. You'll lose everything. But I saw something they didn't. I saw location, near the interstate, near the rail yard, near the port. Perfect for logistics, just needed vision and work, lots of work. I kept my other jobs, ran the warehouse nights and weekends, started small, offered storage to local businesses, cheap rates, reliable service. I worked like a demon, unloading trucks, organizing inventory, doing everything myself. Slowly, business grew. 1 client became 2, 2 became 5, 5 became 10. I hired my first employee, then my second. Then I quit my other jobs and focused full-time on the warehouse. Daniel was 7 years old. I told him, Mommy has a new job. At a warehouse, it's going to be different now. He didn't understand, didn't care. He was 7. He just wanted me home more, which I was, sort of. I brought him to the warehouse after school. He'd do homework in my office while I worked. It became our routine. By the time Daniel was 10, I'd paid off the warehouse, bought a second one, expanded operations, hired 20 employees, had contracts with major retailers, was making real money. By the time Daniel was 15, I owned 4 warehouses, had 100 employees, was grossing $5 million a year, had bought a nice house, normal neighborhood, 3 bedrooms, backyard, everything I dreamed of as a poor kid. Daniel was proud of me then, told his friends, my mom owns warehouses, she's a boss. But I also made a decision I thought was smart but turned out to be a mistake. I didn't tell Daniel how much money I was making, didn't show him the corporate side, just let him see me at the warehouses, working, managing, supervising. He thought I was successful, comfortable, doing okay. He didn't know I was wealthy, building an empire, creating something significant. I wanted him to work hard, to build his own success, to not rely on my money, to be self-sufficient. So I paid for his college but made him work part-time, bought him a used car but not a new one, helped with expenses but didn't spoil him, wanted him to appreciate what he had, earn what he got. Daniel went to business school, graduated with decent grades, worked at a logistics company for a few years, learned the industry, then came to me. Mom, I want to start my own business, storage solutions. I have a plan. I just need capital. He showed me his business plan. It was Okay, not great, but okay. He wanted to start a small storage facility. Commercial clients, compete with the big companies. How much do you need? I asked. $300,000. I know it's a lot, but I can pay you back with interest. I just need a chance. I could have given him the money outright. Could have told him I had millions. That 300,000 was nothing to me. That I could write a check right then and not even notice. Instead, I made a proposal. I'll invest, but as a partner, I'll put in 300,000. You put in your labor and expertise. We split ownership 60-40. Me 60, you 40. When the business is profitable, you can buy me out. Daniel was thrilled. Didn't even negotiate. Just said yes. Signed paperwork my lawyer drew up. Papers he barely read. Papers that included clauses, terms, rights, including a buyback clause that let me purchase his 40% any time I wanted. He didn't read the fine print. Just saw Mom is investing in me. Mom believes in me. I'm going to build something. So he built Morrison Storage Solutions, rented a facility, bought equipment, hired staff, worked hard, and succeeded. The business grew, made money, became profitable within 2 years. Daniel was proud. I built this myself, he told people. Started from nothing, got a loan from my mom, and turned it into a real business. A loan. That's how he framed it. Not a partnership, not shared ownership. A loan he'd pay back someday. And I let him believe that. Let him think he was self-made. Let him have his pride. Because I thought it was good for him. I thought it built character. Meanwhile, I kept growing Morrison Logistics, bought more warehouses, expanded into 3 states, 15 facilities, 400 employees, $72 million valuation. I was CEO of a major regional logistics company. But to Daniel, I was just Mom, who worked at warehouses, who had invested in his business, who lived simply and drove an old truck and wore practical clothes. He didn't know, didn't ask, didn't wonder why someone who worked at warehouses had $300,000 to invest. Didn't question it, just accepted it. Because that's what children do. They accept their parents' lives without curiosity, without wondering about the details, just accepting what's visible and assuming that's all there is. When Daniel married Jessica 3 years ago, I met her parents, Richard and Maureen, upper middle class. Richard owned a small accounting firm. Maureen was a realtor. They had money, not rich, but comfortable. Country club membership, nice house, new cars, and they looked down on me. I could see it. This woman in practical clothes who worked at a warehouse. Not educated, not refined, not their social class. Jessica had clearly told them I was poor, struggling, that Daniel was supporting me, that I lived with him because I couldn't afford my own place. I didn't correct them, didn't explain, just smiled and let them think what they wanted. It's so generous of you to let Daniel's mother live with you, Maureen said to Jessica at the wedding reception. Not many young couples would be so accommodating. Jessica smiled. Well, she doesn't have anywhere else to go, and she's family. We're happy to help. Help? Like I needed charity, like they were doing me a favor. I said nothing, just smiled, drank my champagne, watched my son marry a woman who thought she was better than me. After the wedding, Daniel and Jessica moved into a house. A nice house, 4 bedrooms, good neighborhood, quarter-acre lot. We bought a house, Daniel told me excitedly. With the profits from Morrison Storage? I'm doing well, Mom, really well. I smiled. I'm proud of you. He didn't know the house was in my name, that I'd put up the down payment, that the deed had clauses giving me ownership rights, that legally I could claim it any time. He didn't know because he never asked to see the deed, just assumed the house was his because he lived in it. Come live with us, he said. You shouldn't be alone. We have plenty of space. I hesitated. I had my own house, a beautiful house, paid off, 4,000 square feet, in a gated community. But Daniel had never seen it, thought I lived in a small apartment near the warehouses. Are you sure? I asked. Newlyweds need privacy. We have 4 bedrooms. You can have your own space. It'll be great. Family together. So I moved in, brought minimal things, clothes, personal items, acted like someone downsizing from an apartment, let them think they were helping me. And for 2 years, it was fine. Not great, but fine. Jessica was polite. Daniel was busy with work. I stayed out of the way. Cooked sometimes. Babysat the kids when they were born. Tried to be helpful without being invasive. But slowly, things changed. Jessica got colder. Made comments. Helen, could you not leave your shoes by the door? It looks cluttered. Helen, we're having guests tonight. Maybe you could eat in your room? Helen, Daniel's colleagues are coming for dinner. Could you make yourself scarce? Daniel never defended me. Just said, Mom, Jessica's stressed. Just go along with it. It's easier. Easier for him, not for me. Then Jessica's parents started visiting more, and the comments got worse. Still living here, Helen? Haven't found your own place yet? Must be nice having your son take care of you. When I was your age, I'd never dream of imposing on my children. Imposing in my own house, on my own property, with people who didn't even know the truth. And I stayed quiet, because I still believed. Believed Daniel would eventually stand up for me. Believed Jessica would warm up. Believed it would get better. But it didn't get better. It got worse. Until tonight, when Daniel told me I was embarrassing them, when he gave me 30 days to leave, when he treated me like a tenant, a burden, a problem, and I realized my strategy had backfired. Letting Daniel think I was poor hadn't built character. It had built contempt. He wasn't proud of his self-made success. He was ashamed of his struggling mother. So sitting in my room that night, surrounded by documents he'd never seen, I made my decision. I was done protecting him from the truth. Done letting him believe a lie that made him look down on me. Done sacrificing my dignity for his pride. It was time for Daniel to learn who his mother really was and what he really owned, which was nothing. The next morning, I made my first call. Robert, it's Helen Morrison. I need you to prepare eviction paperwork for 425 Maple Street. The residents are Daniel Morrison and Jessica Morrison. Yes, my son. Grounds. The property owner, me, is reclaiming the residence for personal use. I want them out in 30 days. Yes, I'm sure. Executed. Second call. Sarah, Helen, I need you to activate the reversion clause on the Maple Street property, the one we discussed. Daniel signed it when I transferred the deed. He never read it. He has 30 days to vacate. Prepare all necessary documentation. Third call. Marcus, it's Helen. I'm exercising the buyback clause on Morrison Storage Solutions. Yes, Daniel's business. I'm purchasing his 40% share at fair market value. The contract we signed 7 years ago gives me that right. Prepare the paperwork. And Marcus, I want it done this week. 3 calls, 30 minutes, and Daniel's world was about to change forever. I didn't feel guilty, didn't feel vindictive, just felt tired. Tired of being underestimated. Tired of being disrespected. Tired of letting people treat me poorly because they didn't know better. Sometimes the truth is a gift, even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. The next 3 days were normal. Daniel went to work. Jessica took care of the kids. I went to my job at the warehouse, which technically wasn't a lie. I did go to the warehouse to inspect, to oversee, to run my company. On day 3, Daniel came home from work looking confused. Mom, did you do something with the house? I got a weird letter from a law firm today. What kind of letter? Something about property ownership verification. I don't understand it. Probably junk mail. It wasn't junk mail, it was preliminary notice, standard procedure before eviction. But Daniel didn't know that. I'm sure it's nothing, I said. Day 4, Saturday morning, Daniel was home having coffee, reading the newspaper, living his normal life. The doorbell rang. Daniel answered it. A man in a suit stood there. Daniel Morrison? Yes? I'm serving you with legal notice. You and Jessica Morrison have 30 days to vacate this property. The owner is reclaiming it for personal use. You're required to remove all belongings and surrender the keys by November 15th. Daniel stared at the papers. What? There must be some mistake. This is my house. I bought it 3 years ago. According to the deed filed with the county, this property is owned by Helen Morrison. You're listed as a resident, not an owner. You have 30 days? The man left. Daniel stood in the doorway holding papers. Face pale, hands shaking. He turned to me. Mom, what is this? What's going on? I looked at my son, at his confusion, his fear, his complete lack of understanding. That's an eviction notice, Daniel. You have 30 days to leave, just like you gave me. But this is my house. I bought it. No, you didn't. I bought it. I put up the down payment. I co-signed the mortgage. The deed is in my name with you as a resident. You never actually looked at the paperwork, did you? But why would you do that? Protection. I wanted to make sure if something happened, if you divorced, if you got sued, if you had financial problems, the house would be safe. So I kept it in my name. You signed papers agreeing to that. You just never read them. Daniel's face went from confused to angry. You can't do this. You can't just kick us out. We have kids. Where are we supposed to go? I don't know, Daniel. Find something small, something you can afford on your salary. Isn't that what you told me? That's different. You're one person. We're a family of 4. Yes, you're a family in my house. That I've let you live in rent-free for 3 years. That I could have charged you $3,000 a month for. That's $108,000 I've given you out of generosity. And you repaid me by calling me an embarrassment and evicting me. So now I'm exercising my legal right to reclaim my property. Jessica appeared in the hallway. What's going on? Why is Daniel yelling? Daniel showed her the eviction notice. Her face went white. This can't be legal. Helen doesn't own this house. We do. Actually, I do, I said calmly. Check the deed. It's public record. I'm the owner, your residence, and I want my house back. Jessica's voice rose. You can't do this. We have nowhere to go. You're supposed to be leaving, not us. Plans changed. This is insane. Daniel, call a lawyer. She can't just throw us out. Actually, I can, I said. I own the property. I gave proper notice. It's completely legal. You have 30 days. Daniel was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Mom, why are you doing this? I don't understand. Don't you? You told me I was embarrassing you, that I needed to move out because Jessica's parents were coming and I reflected badly on you. You made me feel like a burden in my own home. So I decided you were right. One of us needs to leave. It's just not the person you thought. But where will we go? I don't know, Daniel. That's not my problem. You're a successful businessman, right? You built Morrison Storage Solutions from nothing. I'm sure you can figure it out. Something in my tone made him pause. What do you mean by that? I pulled out another set of papers from my bag. These came today, too, from my business partner, Marcus. You remember Marcus, right? He helped set up Morrison Storage when you started it. Yeah, so? Marcus is my corporate lawyer, and these papers are notice that I'm exercising my buyback clause. I'm purchasing your 40% share of Morrison Storage Solutions. Daniel's face went from pale to gray. What? The contract we signed 7 years ago, when I invested $300,000. Remember? I wasn't giving you a loan, Daniel. I was buying 60% of the company, with a clause letting me buy your 40% anytime I wanted. You signed it. Your signature is right there. I pointed to the signature line. Daniel's handwriting. 7 years ago. Young and eager and not reading the fine print. You're you're taking my business? I'm exercising my contractual right to purchase your shares at fair market value. The business is worth about $2 million. Your 40% is worth 800,000. You'll receive a check, but you'll no longer be an owner or an employee. I'm bringing in new management. You can't do this. I can, and I am. Jessica's voice was shrill now. She's stealing everything. Daniel, she's stealing our house, your business, everything. I'm not stealing anything. I'm taking back what was always mine. Daniel sank into a chair. I don't understand. Why? Why now? Because you told me to leave. Because you called me embarrassing. Because you've spent 3 years letting your wife treat me like charity. Because you thought I was some poor warehouse worker you were generously supporting. And I decided it was time you learned the truth. What truth? I pulled out my phone, opened my email, showed him the signature line. Helen Morrison, CEO, Morrison Logistics. Daniel stared at it. Morrison Logistics, the big warehouse company? Not just a warehouse company, 15 facilities across 3 states, 400 employees, $72 million in annual revenue. I founded it 36 years ago with $20,000 in a dream, while raising you alone, while working 3 jobs, while sacrificing everything so you could have a better life than I did. You own Morrison Logistics? I am Morrison Logistics. I built it from nothing. I grew it into an empire. And the whole time, you thought I was just some warehouse worker, some embarrassing old woman who couldn't afford her own place. Because that's what I let you think. Because I wanted you to be self-sufficient, to build your own success, to not rely on my money. Daniel was shaking his head. This doesn't make sense. If you're rich, why do you dress like a warehouse worker? Because I am one. I work in warehouses. I supervise operations. I inspect facilities. I get my hands dirty. That's who I am. That's who I've always been. I just happen to own the company. Jessica found her voice. You let us think you were poor. You lied to us. I never lied. I just didn't correct your assumptions. You assumed I was poor because I dressed simply, because I drove an old truck, because I worked at warehouses. You never asked, never wondered, just assumed, and judged me for it. So this is revenge? Because we hurt your feelings? No, Jessica, this is consequences. There's a difference. Revenge would be me destroying Daniel's life out of spite. Consequences are me reclaiming what's mine because you treated me badly. You wanted me gone. I'm granting your wish. I'm just taking my property with me when I go. Daniel looked up, tears in his eyes. Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand. If you'd known I was rich, you would have treated me better? That's not the defense you think it is, Daniel. It means you only respect people with money, only value people with status. Your mother, your poor, embarrassing, warehouse-working mother, didn't deserve respect. But a millionaire CEO does. What does that say about you? He had no answer. I picked up my bag. I'm leaving now. I'm going to my real home, the one you've never seen, the 4,000-square-foot house I bought 10 years ago, the one I've been living in on weekends while pretending to stay here. You have 30 days to vacate this property. You'll receive your buyout check for Morrison Storage within a week. After that, we can discuss our relationship. Or not. That's up to you. Mom, wait. Goodbye, Daniel, Jessica. I hope you find somewhere affordable to live. I hear there are some nice studio apartments downtown, something you can afford on Daniel's salary, now that he's unemployed. I walked out, got in my old truck, drove away, and didn't look back. Not once. But that's not where the story ends. That's where it gets interesting, because the next 30 days, the 30 days Daniel had to vacate my property, were a masterclass in karma. in consequences, in what happens when you underestimate the wrong person. Let me tell you what happened next. I drove to my real home, the one Daniel had never seen, never knew about, never asked about because he'd never been curious enough about his mother's life to wonder where she went on weekends. It was a beautiful house, 4,000 square feet, 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, gated community in the suburbs. I'd bought it 10 years ago for $800,000, paid cash. It was worth about 1.2 million now. I had a home office there, a real one, where I ran Morrison Logistics when I wasn't physically at the warehouses, where I had video conferences with clients, where I signed contracts and reviewed financials and made the decisions that kept a $72 million company running. I also had photos there of me with the governor, with the mayor, with business leaders, accepting awards, speaking at conferences, being recognized as one of the top women in logistics in the Pacific Northwest, none of which Daniel had ever seen because he'd never visited, never asked to visit, just assumed I lived in some small apartment he didn't need to see. That night, I slept in my own bed, in my own house. For the first time in 3 years, I slept without feeling like a guest, without worrying about being in someone's way, without hearing Jessica's passive-aggressive comments through the walls. I slept 10 hours. Best sleep I'd had in years. The next morning, I went to my main warehouse facility, Morrison Logistics headquarters, 15,000 square feet of office and warehouse space, my flagship location. My staff knew who I was, the executives, the managers, the people who'd worked with me for years, but the warehouse workers. Many of them just knew me as Mrs. Morrison, the boss who showed up in jeans and work boots and wasn't afraid to help load a truck. That morning, I called a company-wide meeting, all 400 employees across all 15 facilities, virtual attendance for those not at headquarters. Good morning, everyone. As you know, I'm Helen Morrison, founder and CEO of this company. I have an announcement. Morrison Logistics will be acquiring Morrison Storage Solutions, a smaller storage facility run by my son, Daniel Morrison. This acquisition will expand our local presence and integrate their client base into our operations. Daniel will be stepping down from his role. The transition will happen over the next 30 days. That's all. Thank you. Professional, clean. No mention of why Daniel was stepping down. No mention of our personal conflict. But rumors started immediately, because that's what happens in small industries. People talk, people know people, and soon everyone in Seattle's logistics community knew Helen Morrison had bought out her own son's company, and her son hadn't known she owned it. Daniel, meanwhile, was in denial. That first week, he called lawyers, 3 different firms, tried to fight the eviction, tried to contest the buyback clause, tried to find some legal loophole that would let him keep his house and his business. Every lawyer told him the same thing. Mr. Morrison, the paperwork is airtight. Your mother owns the property. She has legal right to reclaim it. You signed a contract giving her buyback rights on the business. There's nothing you can do. I'm sorry. One lawyer was more blunt. Mr. Morrison, your mother is Helen Morrison of Morrison Logistics. She has the best legal team in the state. She's not making mistakes in her contracts. You signed these documents. They're binding. My advice? Cooperate. Negotiate if you can. But you're not winning this fight. Daniel hung up on that lawyer, called me instead. Mom, please, let's talk about this. There has to be some middle ground, some compromise. What kind of compromise, Daniel? I don't know. Maybe we could co-own the house, or I could buy it from you, or with what money? You're unemployed. You have $800,000 from the business buyout, but that's not enough to buy a 4-bedroom house in this market. And even if it were, I'm not selling. I want my house back. Then what am I supposed to do? Find somewhere else to live, like you told me to do. Mom, this is different. I have a family, kids. You're just one person. And you're just one person who made a very bad decision. You're experiencing the consequences. I'm done protecting you from them. He hung up on me. Jessica called an hour later. Different approach. Tears, begging. Helen, please, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was terrible to you. I was jealous and insecure, and I took it out on you. Please don't do this to us, to the kids. They don't deserve this. You're right. Tyler and Sophie don't deserve this. They deserve parents who model respect, who value people regardless of their status, who don't judge others based on appearance. Are you going to be that parent, Jessica? Yes, I will. I promise. Just please give us another chance. I've given you chances, 3 years of chances. You've spent that time making me feel unwelcome in my own home. Now you want me to reward that behavior? I was wrong. I admit it. What more do you want? I want you out of my house. In 30 days, that's what I want. She hung up. Week 2. Daniel showed up at my real house. I'd given him the address, told him we could meet there to discuss logistics. He pulled up in his BMW. Expensive car, leased, not owned. Another thing he couldn't actually afford without his business income. He stood in my driveway staring at my house, at the 3-car garage, at the manicured lawn, at the security gate, at the evidence of wealth he'd never known about. This is where you live? He asked when I opened the door. This is where I've lived for 10 years. You've just never visited. I didn't know. You didn't ask. I let him inside. He walked through my house like he was in a museum, staring at everything, the expensive furniture, the art on the walls, the photos of me with important people. Mom, who is this? He pointed to a photo of me shaking hands with the governor. Governor Patterson. I consulted on the state's infrastructure logistics plan 2 years ago. And this? Maya Chen, Morrison Logistics sponsors several city programs. And this? That's me accepting the Business Excellence Award from the Seattle Chamber of Commerce 3 years ago. Daniel sat down on my couch. Expensive leather couch, Italian, cost more than his first car. I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me about any of this? About who you really are? I sat across from him because I wanted you to succeed on your own merit, to build your own character, to not be spoiled by wealth, to learn the value of work, to be humble and grateful and kind. I thought hiding my success would teach you those things. And did it? No. It taught you to be ashamed of me, to look down on people you thought were less successful, to let your wife treat me like charity. So no, my strategy failed, spectacularly. If you'd known I was rich, you would have treated me better. But Daniel, don't you see the problem with that? You should have treated me well anyway, because I'm your mother, because I raised you, because I sacrificed everything for you. My respect shouldn't have been contingent on my net worth. He was quiet for a long time. You're right. I know. So what happens now? Now you move out of my house, you accept your buyout check, you find a new job, you build a life that's actually yours, not one I'm funding secretly. And what about us? What about our relationship? That's up to you. If you want a relationship with me, it needs to be based on honesty, on mutual respect, not on you being embarrassed by who you think I am. I'm not embarrassed anymore. No. Now you're impressed. Because you know I'm successful, but that's not better, Daniel. That's just a different form of valuing me for the wrong reasons. He left without another word. Week 3. The truth had spread. Jessica's parents found out. Richard called me. Helen, we need to talk about what's happening with Daniel and Jessica. What about it? They're telling us you're evicting them, that you're stealing Daniel's business, that you've been lying about who you are. What's going on? Everything they're telling you is true, except the stealing part. I'm reclaiming what was always mine. I don't understand. Jessica said you were a warehouse worker, that you lived with them because you couldn't afford your own place. Jessica was wrong. I'm the CEO of Morrison Logistics. I own the house Daniel's been living in. I own 60% of his business. And I'm exercising my legal rights to both. But, but why? Because your daughter convinced my son to evict me, called me embarrassing, said I reflected badly on them, so I'm granting their wish. I'm leaving and taking my property with me. Silence. Then, Jessica said you were poor. Jessica assumed I was poor. There's a difference. She judged me based on my clothes and my truck and decided I was beneath her, and she convinced Daniel to see me the same way. So now they're learning who I really am and what they're really losing. This is this is insane. You can't just throw them out. I can, and I am. The law is on my side. I suggest you prepare to have your daughter and her family move in with you. They'll need somewhere to go. Richard hung up, called Jessica. I know because she called me 20 minutes later, screaming. My father says you're some kind of millionaire, that you own a logistics company. Is that true? Yes. And you never told us? You never asked. This is insane. You let us think you were poor. You lied. I never lied. I wore simple clothes and drove an old truck because I'm practical. I worked at warehouses because I owned them. You made assumptions. I didn't correct them. That's not lying. That's letting people reveal who they really are. You're a manipulative bitch. And you're someone who judges people based on their bank account. Congratulations. You've shown your true character. Now you get to live with the consequences. Jessica's parents didn't offer to let them move in. Too embarrassed, too shocked, too worried about what their country club friends would say. Week 4, final week. Daniel was scrambling. Had found a rental house, nothing like the one he was leaving. 3 bedrooms, older neighborhood, $1,500 a month. Used his buyout money for deposit and first month's rent. He'd also found a job, manager at a competing logistics company, entry-level management, $50,000 a year, a third of what he'd been making running his own business. Jessica was furious. This is your mother's fault. She destroyed our lives. We're going from a 4-bedroom house we owned to a rental. From you being a business owner to you being a basic employee. This is humiliating. We didn't own the house, Daniel said quietly. My mother did, and I wasn't really a business owner. She was. I was just, I don't know what I was. You were successful until she took it all away. No, I thought I was successful, but it was all her. The house, the business, the money, all of it. I didn't build anything. I was living in her shadow and calling it my own achievement. Jessica didn't understand. Couldn't understand. To her, the problem was me, not Daniel's choices, not her own cruelty, just me, the villain who'd ruined everything. On day 29, one day before the deadline, Daniel called. Mom, can I see you? One last time before we move? I drove to the house, my house, for the last time with them in it. The moving truck was in the driveway, boxes everywhere. Daniel and Jessica packing up 5 years of their lives. Tyler and Sophie confused, asking questions. Why are we moving, Daddy? I like this house. Daniel had told them, we're moving to a new house. It'll be an adventure. He hadn't told them why, hadn't admitted his mother owned the house, hadn't explained his shame and cruelty. Just, we're moving. I walked through the house, saw the empty rooms, the marks on the walls where their furniture had been, the evidence of their lives here, lives I'd made possible, lives I'd funded, lives they'd lived while looking down on me. It's weird seeing it empty, Daniel said. It won't be empty long. I'm moving in next week. You're keeping it? It's my house. Of course I'm keeping it. I just thought maybe you'd sell it, move on. Why would I? It's a beautiful house, perfect location. I bought it for you, Daniel, as a gift, as a way to give you stability and security. without making you feel like a charity case. I put it in my name to protect you, and you responded by trying to evict me from it. So now I'm keeping it. For me." He nodded, looked defeated. "I really messed up, didn't I?" "Yes, you did. Is there any way we can fix this?" "That depends. Are you sorry you hurt me or sorry you lost the house?" He thought about it, really thought about it. "Both. I'm sorry I hurt you, genuinely. I was cruel, thoughtless. I let Jessica influence me. I was embarrassed of you for stupid reasons. And I'm learning now that the person I should be embarrassed of is myself. But I'm also sorry I lost the house, and the business, and the life I thought I had. I'm sorry for all of it." "That's honest. I appreciate that. So is there a path forward? For us?" "Maybe. If you can learn from this, if you can grow, if you can become someone who values people for who they are, not what they have, if you can teach your children to be better than you were, then maybe someday we can rebuild our relationship. And if I can't, then you'll have a very expensive lesson, and I'll have a peaceful life without people who don't appreciate me." He hugged me, first time in years. Really hugged me, not the perfunctory hello hug, but a real desperate, "I'm sorry, please don't give up on me" hug. I hugged him back because he's my son, and I love him, even when he disappoints me, even when he hurts me, even when he deserves consequences. "Goodbye, Daniel. Good luck with the move." "Goodbye, Mom. I love you." "I love you too." He left. They all left. The moving truck drove away, and I stood in my empty house, my beautiful, quiet mine house, and I felt peace. 6 months later, I got a call from Daniel. "Mom, can we meet?" We met at a cafe. Neutral ground. He looked different, older, tired, but also more real, less polished, less fake. "How are you?" I asked. "Struggling. Honestly. The job is hard. The pay is terrible compared to what I'm used to. Jessica's miserable. The kids are adjusting, but it's tough. Everything's tough." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you? Really?" "Yes. I don't enjoy seeing you suffer. I just needed you to understand, to learn, to grow." "I think I'm learning. Jessica thinks I should beg you to give me back the business, to let us move back into the house, but I told her no, that's not the lesson here." "What is the lesson?" "That I took you for granted, that I valued the wrong things, that I was so busy trying to impress other people that I forgot to appreciate the person who made everything possible. You built an empire while raising me alone, and instead of being proud of you, I was embarrassed because you didn't fit the image I wanted." That's very self-aware. It's been a rough 6 months, lots of time to think. Lots of conversations with therapists and friends and people who aren't afraid to tell me I was an idiot. I smiled. "You weren't an idiot. You were misguided. There's a difference." "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you hide it? The money? The success? Why not just tell me the truth?" "Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd become entitled, lazy, spoiled. I grew up poor, Daniel, really poor, and I saw what wealth did to some people, how it corrupted them, made them useless. I didn't want that for you. So I hid my success and made you work for yours. But in doing so, I created a different problem. I made you ashamed of working-class people, made you value appearance over substance, made you think success meant looking successful, not being successful. So we both messed up. Yes, we did. Can we fix it?" "Maybe, if you want to." "I do. I really do. I miss you, Mom. Not the woman I thought you were, but the real you. The one I'm getting to know now. The one who built something incredible and stayed humble. The one who's strong enough to enforce consequences even when it hurts. I want to know that person, if you'll let me." I reached across the table, took his hand. "I'd like that." We started rebuilding slowly. Coffee once a month, then twice, then weekly. He'd tell me about his struggles, his job, his marriage, his kids, his life. And I'd listen. Not fix, not rescue, just listen and offer advice when asked and let him work through his own problems. Jessica never apologized to me, never acknowledged what she'd done, just stayed angry. Angry at me, at Daniel, at the universe for taking away her comfortable life. A year after the eviction, she filed for divorce. I didn't sign up for this, she told Daniel. I married a successful business owner, not some mid-level manager living in a rental. Daniel was devastated. Not because he loved her, he'd realized over the year that he didn't really, but because she'd confirmed what he'd feared. She'd married him for status, not love. The divorce was messy. Jessica wanted alimony. Daniel fought it, eventually settled for joint custody and minimal support. She got the BMW, he kept the old Honda. Tyler and Sophie spent weekends with Daniel. And slowly, I started seeing them. Supervised visits at first, then dinners, then overnights at my house. "Grandma, you have a really big house," Tyler said the first time he visited. "How come Daddy never brought us here?" "Because Daddy didn't know about it," I said honestly. "It was my secret." "Why was it a secret?" "Because sometimes adults make mistakes. And I made a mistake hiding things from your daddy, but we're fixing it now." "Can we come back?" "Anytime you want." They came back often, and I taught them things: how to work hard, how to value people, how to be kind regardless of someone's status. All the things I'd tried to teach Daniel but had failed to convey. Maybe I'd do better with grandchildren. 2 years after the eviction, Daniel showed up at my house with news. "Mom, I got promoted, regional manager, at the logistics company, $80,000 a year. It's not much, but it's progress. I'm proud of you. I earned it this time, really earned it. No silent partners, no hidden funding, just me and my work. That's the way it should be. I want to pay you back for the house, for the business. I know I can't afford what they're worth, but I want to start. I want to pay you something every month until I've covered what you invested in me." "Daniel, you don't have to." "I do. I need to. I need to know I can support myself, that I'm not living off your generosity while pretending I'm self-made." "Okay, if it's important to you." He started paying me $500 a month. Symbolic amount. Would take him decades to pay back $800,000, but it wasn't about the money. It was about the principle, about him taking ownership, about him growing up. 3 years after the eviction, I met Daniel's new girlfriend, Sarah, a teacher, kind, real, not interested in impressing anyone. "Mrs. Morrison, it's nice to meet you," she said when Daniel brought her to Sunday dinner. "Daniel's told me so much about you, about your company, about everything you've built. I hope good things. He says you're the strongest person he knows, that you taught him the hardest lesson he ever learned, that he's becoming a better person because of you." I looked at Daniel. He nodded. "It's true. I was a spoiled, entitled jerk, and you forced me to face it. Best thing that ever happened to me." Sarah smiled. "He also says you kicked him out of your house and took his business." "Also true. Good for you. He deserved it." I liked her immediately. 4 years after the eviction, now I'm 66 years old, still running Morrison Logistics, still working in warehouses, still wearing simple clothes and driving my old truck. Daniel is doing well, engaged to Sarah, still paying me $500 a month, still working hard at his job, still learning, still growing. Tyler and Sophie visit every weekend. They call me Grandma, they know I'm rich, but don't care. They just like that I have a pool and I make good cookies and I listen to their stories. Jessica remarried, a doctor, wealthy. She got her status back. I'm happy for her, genuinely. She's not my problem anymore. As for me, I'm happy, truly happy, living in my house, running my company, spending time with people who value me for who I am, not what I have. But let me tell you more about the journey. Because the years between the eviction and now, they weren't simple, weren't clean, weren't a straight line from conflict to resolution. There were moments I doubted myself, moments I almost gave in, moments I wondered if I'd been too harsh, if I'd destroyed my relationship with my son forever, if consequences had turned into cruelty. Let me tell you about those moments, about the complexity of loving someone while holding them accountable, about the price of standing your ground. Month 3 after the eviction. I was in my office at Morrison Logistics headquarters, working late, reviewing quarterly reports. Numbers were good. Company was thriving. But I felt hollow. My assistant Maria knocked on the door. "Mrs. Morrison, there's someone here to see you. Says it's personal." Tyler, my 8-year-old grandson, standing in my office lobby, alone, looking lost. "Tyler, what are you doing here? Where's your dad?" "He doesn't know I'm here. I took the bus. I remembered the address from when Daddy brought me here once." An 8-year-old on a bus, across town, to see me. My heart clenched. "Does your dad know where you are?" "No, I left him a note, said I was going to a friend's house." "Tyler, he's going to be so worried. We need to call him right now." "Please don't. Not yet. I wanted to see you, to understand. Why did you make us leave?" "Daddy won't explain. He just says you had a disagreement. But Sophie's crying every night because she misses her room. And Jessica is always angry. And Daddy looks sad all the time. Why did you do it?" How do you explain adult conflicts to an 8-year-old? How do you say your father was cruel to me, so I enforced consequences? How do you balance truth with age appropriateness? I knelt down, eye level with him. "Tyler, your daddy and I had a problem. He said some things that hurt my feelings. He asked me to leave the house, but the house was actually mine. So I decided if anyone was leaving, it should be him. I know that's confusing, and I know it's hard, and I'm so sorry you're going through this. But you're his mom. Moms are supposed to forgive everything." "Who told you that?" "Jessica. She says you're supposed to forgive Daddy because that's what moms do." Moms love their children always, but love doesn't mean accepting bad behavior. Sometimes love means teaching lessons, even hard lessons. "I don't understand." I know, sweetheart, and that's okay. When you're older, you will. But for now, just know I love your daddy. And I love you and Sophie. That hasn't changed. What changed is that I'm not going to let people treat me badly anymore, even if those people are family. Tyler hugged me, tight, desperate. "I miss you, Grandma. Can you come back? Can we all be a family again?" "Someday, maybe, but not yet. Your daddy needs to learn something first, and I need to remember who I am." I called Daniel. He arrived 20 minutes later, frantic, terrified. When he saw Tyler was safe, he broke down. I didn't know. "Tyler, you can't do that. You can't just leave." "I wanted to see Grandma." "You could have been hurt, kidnapped, hit by a car, anything." But I wasn't. I was smart. I was careful. And Grandma was here. Daniel looked at me, eyes red. "Thank you for calling, for keeping him safe." He's my grandson, of course. Daniel took Tyler home, but that night he called me. "Mom, he's right. Tyler, we need to figure this out. The kids are suffering. This isn't just about us anymore." Then visit. Bring them to my house on weekends. Let them have a relationship with me separate from our conflict. They don't deserve to lose their grandmother because you and I have issues. You'd be okay with that? Of course, I love them. This was never about them. So weekends started. Tyler and Sophie at my house, swimming, playing, having fun, and slowly healing from the trauma of the sudden move, the sudden loss, the sudden everything. Month 6. I ran into Richard and Maureen Jessica's parents at a charity gala. Awkward doesn't begin to describe it. Maureen saw me first. Her face went white. She grabbed Richard's arm. "That's her. That's Helen." Richard turned, saw me in my elegant gown, my jewelry, my presence in the VIP section. His confusion was visible. I walked over. Might as well address it head on. Richard, Maureen, how are you? Maureen couldn't speak, just stared. Richard found his voice. Helen, we didn't expect to see you here. I attend every year. I'm a major sponsor, have been for a decade. A sponsor, of course. We heard about Morrison Logistics, about who you really are. And what did you hear? That you're very successful, that we were wrong about you, that we judged you unfairly. Yes, you did. Maureen finally spoke. Jessica told us you were poor, that you lived with them out of necessity, that you were... She made you sound pathetic. Jessica saw what she wanted to see, and you believed her because it fit your assumptions. I wore practical clothes and drove an old truck, so I must be struggling. That's how it works, isn't it? Judge first. Ask questions? Never. We're sorry, Richard said. Truly, we were wrong. And Jessica? Jessica is realizing she was wrong too. This whole situation has been humbling for all of us. Good. Humility is valuable. Maybe you'll treat people better going forward. I walked away, left them standing there, embarrassed, ashamed, learning their own expensive lesson. Month 9, Daniel's company, the one he now worked for, was struggling, losing clients to Morrison Logistics. My company, my aggressive expansion, my competitive pricing, Daniel called. Mom, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay, are you targeting my company, taking our clients, because you're angry at me? No, I'm competing fairly. We offer better rates and better service. That's business. It has nothing to do with you. It feels personal. Business isn't personal, Daniel. That's something you need to learn. I'm not sabotaging you. I'm running my company effectively. If your employer can't compete, that's their problem, not my fault. But you know I work there. You know losing clients hurts me. Then work harder, offer better solutions, compete. That's how business works. I'm not going to handicap my company because you happen to work for a competitor. That wouldn't be fair to my 400 employees who depend on Morrison Logistics for their livelihoods. You're ruthless. I'm effective. There's a difference. He hung up, frustrated, but also learning that the world doesn't revolve around him, that consequences extend beyond personal relationships, that business is business. Year 1, anniversary of the eviction. I got a letter from Daniel, handwritten, long. Mom, it's been a year since you evicted us, a year since I learned who you really are, a year since my world fell apart and I had to rebuild from nothing. And I want to say something. Thank you. Thank you for not rescuing me. Thank you for not bailing me out. Thank you for letting me fail and struggle and learn, because this year has been the hardest of my life and also the most valuable. I've learned what it's like to actually work for something, to live within my means, to appreciate what I have instead of always wanting more, to value people for who they are, not what they can do for me. I've learned that you weren't just a warehouse worker. You're a titan, a builder, a woman who created something from nothing and stayed humble. And I was too stupid and arrogant to see it. I've learned that Jessica married me for status, not love, and that my kids deserve better than parents who model materialism and judgment. I've learned that I want to be better, not for you, not to get the house back or the business back, but for me. And for Tyler and Sophie, so they grow up seeing a dad who values character over wealth, effort over appearance, integrity over success. I don't know if you'll forgive me. I don't know if we'll ever have the relationship we used to, but I want you to know I'm grateful for the lesson, for the wake-up call, for loving me enough to let me fail. Your son, Daniel. I cried when I read that letter. First time I'd cried about the situation, because that letter, that was growth, real growth, the kind that can't be faked or performed. The kind that comes from genuine transformation. I wrote back, one line, I'm proud of you. Let's have dinner next week. We had dinner, and it was good, real, honest. He told me about therapy, about the work he was doing to understand why he'd been so status conscious, so image focused, so ashamed of anything that didn't look successful. My therapist says I internalized poverty shame, that growing up with a single mother who worked multiple jobs made me feel less than. So, as an adult, I overcompensated, tried to look successful even when I wasn't, tried to hide anything that seemed poor, including you, because if you looked poor, that meant I came from poverty, and I couldn't accept that. But we weren't poor. I was building wealth. You just didn't know. Exactly, which makes it worse. I was ashamed of a poverty that didn't even exist. I was so focused on perception that I missed reality, and I hurt you because of my own insecurity. That's very self-aware. It's costing me $200 an hour in therapy to figure out I'm getting my money's worth. We laughed. First real laugh together in years. Year 2, Sarah entered the picture. Daniel brought her to meet me, nervous. Mom, this is Sarah. She's a teacher. We've been dating for 6 months. I want you to meet her. Sarah was different from Jessica immediately. Warm, genuine. No designer clothes, no pretense. Just real. Mrs. Morrison, thank you for meeting me. Daniel's told me everything about the eviction, about the business, about learning who you really are. It's quite a story. What do you think of it? Of me? I think you did what you had to do. I teach 8-year-olds. I see what happens when kids don't face consequences. They become entitled, cruel, disconnected from reality. Daniel needed consequences. You gave them to him. That's not cruel. That's love. I liked her immediately. This woman understood that love isn't always soft. Sometimes love is hard, firm, uncompromising. How did you two meet? Daniel smiled. She was tutoring Tyler. I picked him up one day and we started talking. She knew who I was, knew the whole story. Everybody in Seattle's small business community does. And she didn't judge. Just said, sounds like you learned an important lesson. And I thought, I need to know this woman. Sarah blushed. I'm not usually that blunt, but the story was so infamous, and I just thought, good for her. Good for his mom for standing her ground. You knew about it before you met Daniel? Everyone knew. It was all over LinkedIn. Morrison Logistics CEO buys out son's company after family conflict. It was the story in business circles for months. I didn't know it was that public. Oh, it was huge. People debated it. Some said you were cruel. Others said you were a hero. But everyone agreed. Don't mess with Helen Morrison. That made me laugh. My reputation as someone not to be messed with. I'd earned it. Accidentally, but completely. Year 3. Tyler was 11, getting older, starting to understand the complexity of what had happened. Grandma, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Why didn't you just tell Daddy you were rich, instead of letting him think you were poor? Wouldn't that have solved everything? Smart kid, asking the core question. I thought keeping it secret would make him stronger, more independent, more self-sufficient. But I was wrong. It backfired. Instead of making him stronger, it made him ashamed. Ashamed of where he came from. Ashamed of me. And that shame turned into cruelty. So no, keeping the secret didn't solve anything. It created the problem. So you made a mistake? Yes, a big one. And your daddy made mistakes too. We both did. And we've both had to face consequences and learn from them. But you're okay now, you and Daddy? We're better. Not perfect, but better. And we're working on it every day. I'm glad. I want you to be friends again, like you used to be. We were never really friends, Tyler. I was his mother. He was my son. That's different. But we're building something new, a relationship based on honesty and respect instead of secrets and assumptions. That's better than what we had before. Even if it meant you had to kick him out, even then. Year 4, now, present day. Daniel proposed to Sarah last month, asked me to be at the wedding, asked if I'd give a speech. I want people to know our story, he said, the real story, about how you taught me the hardest lesson I ever learned, about how I'm a better person because you loved me enough to let me fail. Are you sure? It's not a flattering story for you. It's a true story, and truth is more important than flattery. Will you do it? Yes, I'll do it. The wedding is next month. Small, intimate, just family and close friends. Tyler will be the ring bearer. Sophie will be a junior bridesmaid. I'll wear a beautiful dress, expensive, elegant, and people will know exactly who I am. Not the broke old warehouse worker, but Helen Morrison, CEO, empire builder, millionaire, mother, grandmother, woman who stood her ground. Looking back on these 4 years, I've learned something important. There's no playbook for this. For enforcing consequences with someone you love. For holding your ground while keeping your heart open. For being firm and compassionate at the same time. I've made mistakes. I've been too harsh sometimes, too distant other times. I've questioned myself constantly. Wondered if I did the right thing. Wondered if Daniel would ever forgive me. Wondered if I'd destroyed our relationship permanently. But I've also learned relationships built on truth, even painful truth, are stronger than relationships built on comfortable lies. Daniel and I have something now we never had before: honesty, mutual respect, real understanding. He knows who I am, all of me, not just the mother who raised him, but the businesswoman who built an empire, the strategist who protected him through corporate structures, the woman who wore simple clothes by choice, not necessity. And I know who he is, not the self-made success story he pretended to be, but a man capable of growth, capable of admitting mistakes, capable of changing. That's worth more than the easy relationship we had before. When he thought I was poor and I let him, when he looked down on me and I stayed silent, when I funded his life and he called it his achievement. That relationship was built on lies. This one is built on truth. And truth, painful as it is the only foundation that lasts. My son called me a broke old woman. He told me to move out of his house. He looked down on me because he thought I was poor. And I responded by showing him reality, by taking back what was mine, by letting him face consequences, by teaching him the hardest lesson of his life. Some call it revenge. I call it parenting, adult parenting, the kind where you let your grown child stumble and fall and learn, where you resist the urge to rescue, where you enforce boundaries even when it breaks your heart. Because that's love. Real love. Not the soft, indulgent kind, but the hard, honest kind. The kind that says, I love you enough to let you fail, to let you learn, to let you become better, even if it means losing you temporarily. Daniel lost a house, a business, a marriage, a comfortable life, but he gained himself, the real version, the one built on effort, not gifts, on character, not appearance, on truth, not assumptions. And me? I gained my dignity, my peace, my truth, and a relationship with my son that's based on who we really are, not who we pretended to be. That's the real story, not about eviction or revenge or millionaires teaching lessons, but about love that's strong enough to be hard, about consequences that lead to growth, about truth that hurts but heals. And if anyone's reading this thinking, I could never do that to my child. I could never enforce such harsh consequences. I could never let them suffer like that. I understand. I felt the same way for years. I rescued, I protected, I hid my success to shield him from the burden of wealth. But eventually, I realized protecting people from consequences isn't love. It's enabling, and enabling destroys people just as surely as cruelty does, just more slowly, more quietly, more completely. So I stopped protecting, started enforcing, and yes, it was hard. The hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than building a business, harder than raising a child alone, harder than anything, but it was right. And sometimes right is hard, and sometimes hard is love. My son called me a broke old woman. He learned otherwise. And in learning, he became the man I always hoped he'd be. Not because I gave him everything, but because I took it all away. That's my story. That's my truth. That's my love. Hard, uncompromising, real,